Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. In today's video we will be making a bottom navigation view that is used to control fragments. Let's get started. So as you can see, I already made the Android Studio project. So the first thing we're gonna want to do is go to our activity main layout. And as you can see, there is already a text view here. Which is default, but we're definitely not gonna need that one. The first thing that we are gonna need is a bottom navigation view, and we can use the one from the Android material, which is actually perfect for what we need. So the width we will match to the parent, and the height we will wrap the content. As you can see now in the blueprints, we see that it's still on the top. But of course we want it at the bottom, so we'll give it some constraints to do that. First of all, we'll align the start to the start of the parent, which makes the left side align to the left side. We'll do the same with the right, so we'll align the end to the end of the parent. And now we will align the bottom to the bottom of the parent, which will move it below. That is our constraints in place. We also want to be able to reference to the bottom navigation view in our main activity.java class. So we need to give it an ID, and we'll call it bottom navigation. So what we want now is we want to display our menu here. In order to do that, we first need to make the menu. And when we want to do that, we have multiple options to do this, but one is we go to our resource manager, we go to the menu, and we say new menu resource file, and we call it bottom navigation menu. What happens now is that in our resources, we'll have an extra folder with menu, which will show us our bottom navigation menu. So in my menu, I want to have three things, three items. I want to have settings, I want to have a home page, and I want to have results. So let's make that. The way we do that is in our menu we add an item, and that item we're going to give three things. First of all, we're going to give it an ID so that we can reference it, and we call it navigation. Let's start with the settings, and we want to give it an icon. Right now we don't have any icons yet, and we want to give it a title. And the title in this case we want to be settings. We'll extract this to a string resource that we call settings as well. And that is what our items are going to look like. So for the icon, we want to have some icons that we can import via our drawable. So if we right click on drawable, we can say new, and we can add vector assets. And here we can actually choose clip arts. Android has a big library that we can use. You can also import your own stuff, but the library is actually pretty good. So we're going to start with the settings, and we just keep it as it is and import it and finish it. The same we want to do for the results, in which case we will use a bar chart. And for our home page, we'll use just a regular home icon. So we can use that one. So now we can see that the three icons that we just selected or imported basically are in our drawable folder. So if we go back to our menu now, we can add them to the icon, and we can say add drawable, and we want to start with the settings one, so we import that one. We can copy paste this, you can retype it, whatever you want. But we're going to have two items. The second one is going to be our navigation home. So we're going to use the home drawable, and we're not going to use a settings string for the title, but we want to use home for the title. Extract that to a string as well. And we do the third item, which will be the results. So we extract that one. So that is navigation results. And we want to have the bar chart here. So now we have our menu, settings, home, and results. we added the icons to the menu, and we added the titles. What we need to do now is in our bottom navigation view, we want to link that menu. So we say menu, app menu, and then we want to link our menu resource. So right now we can see that we have our settings, home, and results here in the bottom navigation view. What I want to do now is I want to make sure that the colors do what I want them to do. So if I click something, the color now is primary, and if it's not clicked, it's gray. But I want to be able to define that myself. So we're going to make a new drawable resource file, and it's going to be a selector. And we can call it selector as well. So what we do here is we have two states, so two items. The first item has a state selected true. And what we want to do there is we want to define the color. So this is what one item looks like. And we'll copy paste that. And we'll have a second item, in which case the state selected is false. So now we want to define what colors we want to use. So we have two options. We have our colors.xml, which has some default colors already. You can alter them. We'll not do that in this video. So we can reference this purple 200 color, or we can reference this purple 700 color. But I would like to have the colors change depending on whether the user uses a night mode or dark mode or a light mode, or depending on my theme. So what we can use as well is the theme that has been defined already. So as you can see, we have a color primary here. We have color secondary, and all these things can be referenced as well. And the way we do that is we use a question mark. And then we can say color primary. And for the other item, we can, for example, say color secondary. And as you can see, Android Studio will also give a preview to which colors that will be. So now it will be purple, and it will be sort of cyan color, which is something I do not want. So I'm going to change to color on primary, which is white, and color on secondary, which is defined as black. So let's make sure that our icons use that color. So we can use app item icon tint, and we can reference the drawable selector here, selector. And as you see, now the color has changed. We don't see our settings icon anymore because it's white. So I want to change my background as well. And I want the background to be my primary color. So in this case, it's purple. So what we notice now is that we haven't changed the colors of our labels. So we want to use the same selector for that as well. So we use the item text color, and we'll also use the add drawable / selector. And as you can see now, they have changed. Last thing I want to do is define myself if the labels are shown or not. So we can say label visibility mode, and here you can see that we have a few options. We could go for selected, in which case only the label for the selected icon is shown. In this case, I would like to have them all show, so we'll just go for labeled. And actually that's all for our bottom navigation view. So now we want to have some container in which we can load our fragments. And you see that we have this big blank space on top. And the way we can use fragments is we can load them into a frame layout container. So we'll make a frame layout, and we'll have the width to match the parent, so that's from the left to the right. And it needs to have a height. And the height will use 0 dp, which doesn't mean that it has no height. It means that it's gonna match the constraints. Then we want to actually give it some constraints. So we'll do the same, start to start of parent. So that's constraint to the left, end to end of parent. So that's constraint to the right, top to top of parent. So that's constraint to the top. And now we want to have the bottom of our frame layout to the top of our bottom navigation view. As you can see in the blueprint now, our frame layout is on top of our bottom navigation view. So that's perfect. We also want to be able to access this frame layout from our Java class. So we give it an ID, I'll call it content container. So that is our layout of our main activity done. And now we can start working on the actual main activity. As you can see in the main activity, the layout that we just made is already loaded, so that's perfect. So what we want to do now is we want to make a variable called bottom navigation view and a bottom navigation view. This is so that we can actually do something with our with the view that we just made. So we'll link that bottom navigation view, and we'll say is find view by ID, and we'll look for the ID that we just made, which is bottom navigation. So now we have our bottom navigation view linked. And what we want to do is set a on item selected listener, and we need to give it a listener slash. So we'll just link this one doesn't exist, so it creates a problem. So we can say create method, and it will create the method for us. So that's perfect. So now we just need to do what happens if we actually click one of the items on the bottom navigation view. This listener function is what's going to happen. So we have 3 options that we can click, and in those 3 cases we want to do something else. So we can build a switch case, build on the menu item. So we'll say menu item dot get item ID, and that's what we'll switch it on. So then we have 3 cases. The ID can be navigation home, in which case we'll load the home fragment. The case can be ID navigation results, in which case we'll load the results fragment. And the last case can be navigation settings, in which case we'll load the settings fragment. Now it's going to give us a warning that there is a non-constant resource ID, but we can suppress that one. So then it's fine, no issues. The way the switch case works is, in this case it will loop for all the cases, so we need to add a return statement to every case, and in case that the switch actually runs, we'll return true. So we'll add that to every case. In case that the switch doesn't run, we'll return false. This is a return value that we can use in debugging. So as of now, we don't actually have the fragments, so that's next. We'll actually make the fragments. I'll speed this up in the video, but the main thing that we'll do is we right click on our package. We'll say new fragment, blank fragment. As you can see now, we also have 3 new layouts in our layout folder for the home, results and settings. We won't actually go into our fragment that much. We just use them to show that we actually switch between them. So the only thing I want to update is this little piece of text, so that we actually know in which fragment we are. So instead of the string hello blank fragment, we're going to use the string settings or home for home. We're going to use the results string that we already had for the results, and we're going to use the settings string for the settings. So now if we look at the design, it will display settings. Then if we look at our fragment Java, we see that there's already a lot that Android Studio has put in for us. The most important thing is this onCreateView method, in which case it will inflate our layout that we just made into a container. So we need to define that container in our main activity class in order to actually load the fragment. So let's go and do that. So if we want to load our home fragment, we can use a fragment transition, or fragment transaction, sorry. So we'll say fragment transaction, and we call it fragment transaction, is get support fragment manager, and then we actually need to say begin transaction. That's our first line. Then on our fragment transaction, we want to say replace, and then it shows us what we need to actually input. So we need a container and a fragment, and then maybe a tag if we want to. So let's start with the container. That is our content container. Then our fragment, in this case, we want the home fragment. So we'll say new home fragment. And then we want to have a tag. We'll just use an empty tag for now, but you can use something else if you want to, for example, debug it. Then the last thing we need to do is commit the fragment. So fragment transaction.commit. And in that case, the fragment will be loaded. As you probably can imagine, we'll reuse these 3 lines of code for every fragment that we want to load, which means that we can actually make it into a method, and we'll call it load fragment. And we'll just paste the code that we just made here. If we load the fragment, we want to tell our function which fragment we want to use. So we'll use a input variable that we'll just call fragment, and we'll use the fragment here. And that is our function done. So now we can replace this one by load fragment, and then we'll input a new home fragment. We can copy paste this, use it here, and use it here. And here we, of course, don't want a home fragment, but we want a results fragment. And here we want a settings fragment. So let's run what we have now on our emulator. There are 2 issues with the way the app is now. First of all, we see that there is no default fragment being loaded. The second issue that we can see is that default is that settings is highlighted, and we would like home to be highlighted. So let's fix both of these issues. So what we want to do is on our onCreate, we want to add a default fragment. So the default fragment will be the home fragment. So I'll just say load fragment, a new home fragment. Secondly, we want to change the default selected button. So for that, we use the bottom navigation view, we get the menu, and then we get the item. In this case, it's item 1, since we want to have the middle item. Lastly, we have to set it checked to true. There we go. You should now have an app with a bottom navigation view that allows you to control fragments. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. And hopefully I will see you in the next video.